I am Savannah, 29 years old, and the moment my cousin smashed his crystal wine glass against the imported Italian marble floor was the single most satisfying second of my entire life. Before I tell you about the silence that followed, a silence worth exactly $10 million, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I love seeing how far this story travels. It started as most family disasters do, with a turkey that cost more than my first car. I pulled my beat-up sedan into the driveway of my Uncle Sterling's estate. I had to park way down at the bottom of the hill, practically in the shrubbery, because the circular driveway was already occupied. There it was, glistening under the late afternoon sun like a trophy, a brand new, silver Porsche 911. It was parked diagonally, taking up 2 spaces, just to make sure everyone knew it was there. Next to it sat Uncle Sterling's massive Rolls-Royce Ghost. My little car looked like a tin can that had rolled off a recycling truck by mistake. My dad, Robert, sighed from the passenger seat. He adjusted his tie in the visor mirror. It was the same tie he'd worn to church for the last 5 years. "Remember, Savannah," he said, his voice soft and tired. "Just smile. Eat the food. Don't let them bait you." "I know, Dad," I said, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. "I promise." Low profile. My mom, Ellen, reached over from the back seat and squeezed my shoulder. "We're proud of you, honey. It doesn't matter what they say. You know who you are." I nodded, but my stomach was already tying itself into knots. We walked up the long, paved path to the front door. The house wasn't just a house, it was a fortress of ego. Huge columns, manicured hedges that looked like they were cut with nail scissors, and a front door that looked heavy enough to keep out an army. The door swung open before we even knocked. It was Elena, the housekeeper. Her eyes were kind but tired. "Happy Thanksgiving, Savannah," she whispered, ushering us in. "They're in the great room. Mr. Preston is in a mood." "Thanks, Elena," I whispered back. We walked into the great room. The smell hit me first, expensive leather, roasting meat, and that overpowering cologne Preston always bathed in. The room was loud. Uncle Sterling was holding court by the fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. Aunt Beatrice was fluttering around, critiquing the placement of the napkins. And there was Preston. He was lounging on a velvet sofa, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my dad's annual pension. He looked up as we entered, his eyes scanning us from top to bottom. He didn't stand up. He didn't smile. He just smirked. "Well, well," Preston announced, his voice booming across the room. "The country cousins have arrived. Did you guys take the bus, or did that old Toyota actually make it up the hill?" Uncle Sterling chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Be nice, Preston. It's Thanksgiving." But he didn't look like he meant it. He walked over and gave my dad a firm, almost crushing handshake. "Robert. You look older." "Sterling," my dad said, keeping his voice even. "Good to see you." Aunt Beatrice swooped in on me. She didn't hug me, she did that thing where she pressed her cheek near mine and made a kissing sound into the air. Then she pulled back, holding me by the shoulders at arm's length. Her eyes darted over my outfit, a simple black dress I'd bought on sale 3 years ago. "Oh, Savannah," she sighed, shaking her head. "You're still wearing this?" "I think I saw this in photos from Christmas, was it 2021? You know, appearances matter, dear. Especially if you want to attract a partner. A woman your age, the clock is ticking." "I'm fine, Aunt Beatrice," I said, forcing the smile my dad had asked for. "I've been busy with work." "Work?" Preston scoffed from the couch. He swirled his drink. "Right. The computer thing. How is that going? Still playing video games in a basement somewhere?" I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm a software engineer, Preston. And we're developing back-end infrastructure for data processing." "Boring," Preston sang out. You know what's not boring? My new promotion. VP of Strategic Development at Dad's company. And he pointed a manicured finger toward the window, the new 911 out front. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. That's what success looks like, Savannah. Speed. Power. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. Congratulations, Preston. Yeah, well, he shrugged. Some of us are born for the corner office, and some are born to fix the printers. We moved to the dining table. It was set like a royal banquet. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, heavy linen napkins. I sat between my mom and a distant cousin I barely knew. Preston sat at the head of the table, opposite his father, asserting his dominance. Dinner was a minefield. Every topic was a trap. So, Robert, Uncle Sterling said, carving the turkey with an electric knife that whirred aggressively. How's the retirement? Managing to survive on that pension. If you need a loan, you know the rates are high these days, but family is family. We're doing just fine, Sterling, my dad said, cutting his meat methodically. We have everything we need. If you say so, Sterling laughed. I just closed a deal last week. $3 million in commercial real estate. Boom. Just like that. That's how you build a legacy. You don't build a legacy by fixing toaster ovens. My dad was a highly respected electrical engineer before he retired. He didn't fix toasters. But correcting Sterling was useless. Then, the conversation turned to me. Again. Savannah, Aunt Beatrice said, sipping her wine. I ran into Mrs. Gable yesterday. You remember her son, Timothy. He's 52 now, just got divorced. He's looking for a wife. He has a very successful pool cleaning business. I could set you up. At this point, you can't be too picky. You need someone to take care of you. I gripped my fork. I can take care of myself, Aunt Beatrice. Preston laughed so hard he choked on his wine. Take care of yourself. Savannah, please. You drive a car that's held together by duct tape. You live in that tiny apartment in the city. If you break a nail, you probably have to budget for a month to fix it. Face it. You need a rich husband. It's your only exit strategy. I don't need an exit strategy, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Everyone needs an exit strategy, Preston said, leaning forward. He slapped a heavy set of car keys onto the table. The Porsche crest gleamed in the candlelight. See this? This is power. This is what men want. Men don't want a girl who smells like soldering iron and despair. They want a trophy. You're a participation award. My mom gasped. Preston. That is enough. It's fine, Mom, I said quietly. Under the table, my hand was shaking. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I needed a distraction. I needed to breathe. I saw a text notification from Julian Vance. He was the CEO of the startup I'd been pouring my life into for the last 5 years. The text read, "It's done. The wire just hit. Check your account. You did it, save. We're unicorns." My heart stopped. I unlocked my phone. I opened my banking app. I waited for the little spinning circle to load. The Wi-Fi in Uncle Sterling's house was surprisingly slow for a millionaire. I looked up. Preston was still talking, something about his stock portfolio, and how he was going to buy a boat next summer. Aunt Beatrice was nodding along, looking at him like he was a god. My dad was staring at his plate, looking small and defeated. The screen loaded. I blinked. I blinked again. There it was. A number so long it had commas I wasn't used to seeing. $10,240,000. $240,000. The room went silent for me. The clinking of silverware, the boasting voices, the whir of the electric knife, it all faded into a dull hum. I stared at the screen. This wasn't a glitch. This was my equity. This was 5 years of sleeping under my desk, of eating instant noodles, of being told no by 100 investors, of building code while Preston was building a hangover. Savannah. Aunt Beatrice's voice cut through the fog. Are you texting at the dinner table? How rude. Who is it? That pool cleaner? Or are you checking your bank balance to see if you can afford dessert? She laughed at her own joke. Preston joined in. She's probably checking to see if her paycheck bounced. Startups are risky, cuz. Should have got a real job. I looked up from my phone. I looked at Preston. Really looked at him. I saw the sweat on his upper lip. I saw the desperation in his eyes that he tried to hide with arrogance. I saw a man drowning in expectations he couldn't meet. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt like a giant. Actually, I said, my voice steady and clear. I was just checking a notification. Oh? Preston smirked. Coupon for cat food. No, I said. A deposit. But before I could say another word, the memory of how I got here washed over me. You need to understand, this moment wasn't just about money. It was about 20 years of psychological warfare. To understand why I reacted the way I did, you have to go back to the beginning. Back to the day I realized that in my family, love had a price tag. The gap between my cousin Preston and me wasn't just geographical, even though they lived on the hill, and we lived in the valley. It was a gap in reality. I remember my 10th birthday vividly. It was the first time I truly understood what poor felt like, not because we were starving, but because of the comparison. My parents threw me a party in our backyard. My dad hung streamers from the old oak tree, and my mom baked a chocolate cake from scratch. It was lopsided, but it tasted like love. We had hot dogs on the grill, and a sprinkler for the kids to run through. Uncle Sterling and Aunt Beatrice arrived late, as always. They pulled up in a sleek black Mercedes. Preston, who was 11 then, stepped out wearing a polo shirt tucked into khaki shorts. He looked like a miniature accountant. He looked at the sprinkler, then at the mud puddle forming near the patio. I'm not playing in that, he announced. My shoes are Italian. I ran up to him, excited. Preston. Come look. I got a telescope. We can see the moon tonight. He looked at my telescope. It was a cheap plastic thing my dad had found at a garage sale and fixed up. That's a toy, Preston sneered. My dad has a telescope in his study that can see the rings of Saturn. It cost $5,000. My smile faltered. Oh. Then came the gifts. My friends gave me handmade cards, hair clips, simple things. Uncle Sterling handed me a box wrapped in gold paper. I tore it open. Inside was a doll. But not a new doll. It was a porcelain doll, slightly dusty, with one eye that didn't quite open all the way. It's an antique, Aunt Beatrice said, sniffing the air as if our backyard smelled. It belonged to the daughter of our previous maid. She left it behind. I thought you might appreciate it. You know, waste not, want not. I held the discarded doll of a maid's daughter. I felt a lump form in my throat. They didn't buy me a gift. They gave me trash they wanted to clear out of their attic. Thank you, I whispered because my mother had taught me manners. 2 months later was Preston's birthday. They rented out an entire water park. Not a section. The whole park. There were catered buffets with shrimp and steak. There were clowns, magicians, and a DJ. Every kid in his private school class was there. I stood by the wave pool, wearing my faded swimsuit, feeling invisible. Preston was running around with his friends, pushing kids into the water, cutting in line. The lifeguards didn't say a word because Uncle Sterling had paid them off. At cake time, Preston opened his gifts. A new dirt bike. A state-of-the-art gaming system. A check for his savings account that had more zeros than I could count. I walked up to give him my card. I had drawn a picture of him on his dirt bike. I was proud of it. He took the card, glanced at it, and tossed it onto a pile of wrapping paper on the floor. He didn't even open it. "Thanks, Save," he muttered, turning away to high-five a friend. "Dad says your dad fixed the wiring in the guest house last week. Maybe you can come clean the pool next summer." The other kids laughed. I stood there, burning with shame. I realized then, to them, we weren't family. We were the help. But the real knife in the heart came when we were teenagers. The high school science fair. This was my domain. I wasn't cool, I wasn't rich, but I understood code. I spent 3 months building a basic weather prediction program on a refurbished laptop. It was clumsy, but it worked. I had coded every line myself, staying up until 3 a.m., fueled by determination to prove I was smart. Preston entered the fair too. He had to for his college application resume. I set up my booth next to his. My display was cardboard and markers. Preston's display looked like a NASA exhibit. He had a working model of a geothermal power plant. It had moving parts, steam, LED lights. It was incredible. But Preston didn't know how it worked. I heard him talking to his friends before the judges arrived. "My dad flew in an engineer from the firm," Preston bragged. "The guy built the whole thing in a weekend. I just have to stand here and look pretty." "Isn't that cheating?" one friend asked. "It's not cheating," Preston laughed. "It's delegating. That's what leaders do." When the judges came around, one of them was a golf buddy of Uncle Sterling. They barely glanced at my laptop. I tried to explain my algorithm. "That's nice, dear," the judge said, patting my head like I was a toddler. "Very ambitious." Then they moved to Preston. "Preston. My boy. What do we have here?" Preston recited a script he had clearly memorized but didn't understand. He mispronounced geothermal. He called the turbine a spinny thing at one point. It didn't matter. First place, Preston Sterling. I stood there holding my participation ribbon, watching him hoist the trophy. My dad put his hand on my shoulder. His hand was rough, calloused from years of working with wires and pliers. "I know," Dad whispered. "I know it's not fair, Savannah. But listen to me. He has a trophy he didn't earn. You have a brain that you built. One day, that trophy will gather dust. But your brain, that's yours. They can never repossess that." "It feels like they're winning, Dad," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "They're renting victory, honey," Dad said. "You're going to own yours." That night, I made a vow. I looked at the participation ribbon on my wall. I took a black marker and wrote across it, "Never again." I decided I wouldn't just be smart. I would be undeniable. I would build something they couldn't buy, couldn't bribe, and couldn't fake. But life has a way of testing your resolve before it grants your wishes. The years that followed weren't a straight line to success. They were a brutal lesson in the difference between having a safety net and free falling. By the time I was 22, the divide had turned into a canyon. I got into a top-tier state university on an academic scholarship. It covered tuition but not living expenses, books, or food. I worked 2 jobs, one at the library, one as a barista. I smelled like old paper and roasted coffee beans for 4 years. Preston went to an Ivy League school. Uncle Sterling donated a new wing to the library, and suddenly Preston was accepted. He drove his BMW convertible to campus. I took the Greyhound bus. The breaking point, the moment I stopped looking at them as family and started looking at them as the enemy, happened in my junior year. My car, a rusty Honda Civic I'd bought for $800, died. The transmission blew out in the middle of an intersection. The mechanic told me it would cost $1,200 to fix. I had $42 in my bank account. I couldn't get to work without a car. If I didn't work, I couldn't pay rent. If I didn't pay rent, I'd be homeless. It was a terrifying domino effect that rich people never have to think about. I called my parents. They were struggling to pay off a medical bill from when Mom broke her hip. I heard the worry in my dad's voice when I told him the number. I can try to pick up some overtime, Savannah, he said, his voice cracking. Give me a week. No, Dad, I said. You're already working 6 days a week. I'll figure it out. I swallowed my pride. I drove my broken car, which could only go 20 miles per hour, up the hill to Uncle Sterling's house. It was a Tuesday night. I knew they were home. I knocked. Aunt Beatrice answered, holding a glass of wine. She looked at my grease-stained jeans and sighed. Savannah. Is everything okay? We're about to have dinner. I'm sorry to bother you, Aunt Beatrice, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need to talk to Uncle Sterling. It's important. She let me in, but she made me wait in the hallway, like a delivery girl. Uncle Sterling came out, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Preston trailed behind him, holding a game controller. What is it, Savannah? Sterling asked, checking his watch. My car died, I said, looking at my shoes. I need $1,200 to fix the transmission. I can't get to work without it. I'll pay you back. I swear. I'll sign a contract. I'll pay interest. Silence. Sterling looked at Beatrice. Beatrice looked at the ceiling. Then Preston laughed. $1,200. That's what I spent on bottle service last night. Just buy a new car, Savannah. Stop driving that junk. I can't afford a new car, Preston, I said, my teeth clenched. Uncle Sterling, I pleaded. Please. It's for school. It's for my job. Sterling sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of disappointment. Savannah, you know my philosophy. Handouts create weakness. If I give you this money, I'm robbing you of the lesson. You need to learn to manage your finances better. Maybe you should work more hours. I work 30 hours a week and take full credits, I said, my voice rising. Then work 40, Sterling said coldly. I built this empire from nothing. That was a lie, he inherited his father's real estate firm. I'm not going to enable your poor planning. Poor planning? I choked out. My transmission exploded. That's life, Sterling said, turning his back. Dinner is getting cold. Good luck, Savannah. Preston lingered for a second. He leaned against the wall, smirking. Hey, Save. If you're really desperate, the frat house needs someone to clean up after our parties on weekends. We pay $10 an hour. You'd be great at it. I looked at him. I looked at his soft hands that had never held a wrench or a mop. Go to hell, Preston, I whispered. Have fun walking, he called out as I slammed the door. I sat on the curb outside their mansion and cried. I cried out of anger, out of humiliation, out of the sheer injustice of the universe. Then, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. Chloe was my roommate. She wasn't rich either. She worked at a bakery. Hey, she said. You haven't come home. Are you okay? I told her everything. The car. The refusal. Preston's comment. Stay there, Chloe said. I'm coming to get you. She showed up 20 minutes later in her beat-up van. She jumped out and hugged me. Then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. Here, she said. I looked at it. Chloe, where did you get this? I sold my Vespa, she said, shrugging. I don't ride it much in the winter anyway. Chloe, no. I gasped. You love that scooter. It's your baby. You're my best friend, she said fiercely. And you're going to be a big shot engineer someday. You need to get to class. Take it. You can pay me back when you're a millionaire. I took the money, my hands shaking. I looked at Chloe's fierce, loyal face, and then back at the looming mansion behind me. I will, I promised. I will pay you back 1,000 times over. And I will make them regret this day. That $1,200 didn't just fix my transmission. It fueled my engine. I stopped caring about their approval. I stopped trying to be part of their family. I focused entirely on the code. I graduated top of my class. Preston graduated too, thanks to a generous donation his dad made to the alumni fund. He went straight into a VP role at Sterling Corporation. I had job offers from big tech companies. Safe jobs. Good salaries. $80,000 a year. Benefits. But then I met Julian Vance. He was a dropout with a crazy idea for a data compression algorithm. He had no office, no funding, and a laptop held together with stickers. I can't pay you, Julian told me over coffee in a diner. Not yet. But I can give you equity. 5%. If this works, we change the industry. If it fails, we're broke. My dad begged me to take the safe job at Google. Savannah, please. Security is everything. I looked at the offer letter from Google. Then I looked at Julian's messy code. It was brilliant but unfinished. It needed me. I thought about Preston. I thought about him sitting in his unearned corner office. If I took the safe job, I'd be comfortable. But I would never be free. I would never have FU money. I'm in, I told Julian. That was the beginning of the 5 hardest years of my life. You think being a tech founder is glamorous. You've watched too many movies. It's not hoodies and ping pong tables. It's panic attacks at 4 a.m. It's watching your bank account drain while you wait for a venture capitalist to call you back. For the first 2 years, Lumina, our company, was a joke. We worked out of a basement that smelled of mildew. I coded for 18 hours a day. My eyes burned constantly. My social life evaporated. I missed my cousin's wedding. I missed Christmas. I missed birthdays. The family gossip mill, led by Aunt Beatrice, had a field day. Savannah is unemployed, I heard, she told the neighbors. She's working on a project. Poor thing. Wasting her degree. I heard she's living in a studio apartment in the bad part of town. She was right. I was. I lived on instant oatmeal. I cut my own hair. When my shoes wore out, I glued the soles back on. Meanwhile, Preston was living the high life. His Instagram was a catalog of excess. Trips to Dubai. VIP tables in Vegas. A new watch every month. He posted a photo of himself leaning against his BMW with the caption, #self-made #grind never stops. I wanted to throw my phone through the wall. He didn't know what grind was. Grind was debugging a kernel panic at 3 a.m. knowing that if you didn't fix it, the demo would crash and the investors would walk. Year 3 was the darkest. We ran out of seed money. Julian called a meeting. We have payroll for 1 more month, he said, his face pale. After that, lights out. I had saved up $5,000 over 3 years. It was my emergency fund. I'll defer my salary, I said. Put it back into the server costs. Save, you can't live on air, Julian said. I'll figure it out, I said. I sold my car. The one I had fixed with Chloe's money. I started taking the bus again. I picked up freelance coding gigs on weekends just to pay rent. My dad visited me once during this time. He saw my apartment, the mattress on the floor, the empty fridge. "Savannah," he said, tears in his eyes. "Come home. This isn't worth it. Look at you. You're thin as a rail." "I can't, Dad," I said. "We're so close. The algorithm works. We just need scale." "What if it fails?" he asked. "Then at least I tried," I said. "I'm not going to be safe, Dad. I'm going to be great." He hugged me, left me a bag of groceries, and slipped $100 bill into my pocket. I cried when he left. Then the tide turned. A tech giant, Data Corp, took an interest. They realized our compression tech was faster than theirs. They didn't want to compete with us, they wanted to own us. Negotiations started 6 months ago. It was secret. Strict NDAs. I couldn't tell anyone. Not even my parents. I had to sit at family gatherings and listen to Uncle Sterling lecture me about career stability, while I knew I was sitting on a winning lottery ticket. "You should really look into government work, Savannah," Sterling said at Easter. "Good pension. Slow pace. Suits your temperament." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, sipping my water. Preston chimed in. "Yeah, or maybe tech support. I can get you an interview at our IT help desk. Starting salary is $45,000. Not bad for someone with a gap in their resume." I just smiled. A cold, hard smile. Just you wait, I thought. Then came the call. Yesterday. Thanksgiving Eve. I was packing my bag to go to Uncle Sterling's house. My phone rang. It was Julian. "Save," his voice was shaking. "Yeah. They signed. The wire transfer is scheduled for tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. I dropped my bag. "How much?" $200 million for the company. Your share, after dilution and taxes, it's over $10 million, save. I sat down on my floor. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I just exhaled. A breath I felt like I had been holding for 5 years. "We did it," I whispered. "We did it," Julian said. "Go buy a castle, save. You earned it." That night, I slept for 12 hours. The next morning, this morning, I put on my old black dress. I got in my old car, which I had bought back recently for sentimental reasons. I drove to the lion's den. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew they would mock me. I knew they would flex their wealth. But this time, I was walking in with a nuclear weapon in my pocket. Which brings us back to the dinner table. To the moment Preston asked if I was checking a coupon for cat food. The air in the dining room was thick enough to choke on. The candles flickered, casting long shadows on the faces of my relatives. "A deposit?" Preston repeated, a smirk playing on his oily lips. He leaned back, crossing his arms over his expensive suit. "What, did you sell a kidney? Or did you finally cash in those recycling cans?" Aunt Beatrice tittered nervously. "Now, Preston, don't be crude. Maybe she got a tax refund." "It's not a tax refund," I said quietly. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my voice was ice cold. Preston laughed. "Let me see." He reached across the table. In a normal world, I would have pulled away. But I wanted this. I needed this. I placed my phone, screen up, in the center of the table. Right next to the turkey platter. "Look for yourself," I said. Preston rolled his eyes and picked up the phone. "Okay, let's see what the big tycoon has." His voice trailed off. He froze. He blinked, squinted, and pulled the phone closer to his face. "What is this?" he muttered. "Is this a game?" Is this a simulator? It's my Wells Fargo app, Preston, I said. Touch the screen. It's live. He tapped the screen. He refreshed the page. The little wheel spun. $10,240,000. The color drained from his face. He went from sunbed tan to sheet white in 3 seconds. His mouth opened but no sound came out. Preston? Uncle Sterling asked, sensing the shift in the room. What is it? Preston looked up at me. His eyes were wide with shock, but then, quickly, they filled with something else. Rage. Pure, unadulterated jealousy. You liar, he whispered. Excuse me. I said. Liar. Preston screamed. He slammed my phone down onto the table so hard a wine glass toppled over, sending red Cabernet spilling across the white tablecloth like blood. Aunt Beatrice shrieked. Preston. My tablecloth. It's fake. Preston yelled, standing up. His chair screeched against the marble floor. She hacked it. She's trying to prank us. There is no way, no way, you have $10 million. You drive a Toyota. You wear rags. It's called Lumina, Preston, I said, not moving a muscle. The company you called a video game. We were acquired by Data Corp yesterday for $200 million. I own 5%. Uncle Sterling dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against his china plate. Data Corp. The Data Corp. Yes, I said. Google it. The press release went out an hour ago. Sterling pulled out his own phone. His fingers fumbled as he typed. He read silently for a moment. Then he looked at me. His expression changed instantly. The condescension vanished, replaced by a greedy, calculating glimmer. My God, Sterling whispered. It's true. Data Corp acquires compression startup Lumina for massive sum. Savannah, why didn't you tell us? Because you were too busy telling me to marry a pool cleaner, I said. Preston wasn't hearing any of this. He was hyperventilating. His entire identity, the rich cousin, the successful one, the golden boy, was crumbling. It's not fair. Preston shouted. He looked like a toddler having a tantrum, except he was a 30-year-old man in a bespoke suit. I work every day. I manage accounts. I have a title. She sits in a basement. She does nothing. How does she get 10 million? I built something, Preston, I said, standing up now. I created value. You inherited a chair. Shut up. Preston grabbed a porcelain serving bowl filled with mashed potatoes and hurled it across the room. It smashed against the fireplace, exploding in a white puff. Preston. Aunt Beatrice screamed. Calm down. No. I won't calm down. Preston pointed a shaking finger at me. She tricked us. She let us treat her like dirt just so she could humiliate us. You're sick, Savannah. You're a sociopath. I let you treat me like dirt. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Preston, you treated me like dirt because you enjoyed it. I just finally stopped caring. Preston lunged toward me. You think you're better than me? You think money makes you better than me? My dad stood up. My dad, Robert, is a quiet man. He's 5 feet 9 inches, balding, and wears glasses. He's never raised a hand to anyone in his life. But in that moment, he looked 10 feet tall. He stepped between me and Preston. He didn't shout. He didn't push. He just stared Preston down with the quiet intensity of a man who has lived a life of integrity. Sit down, son, my dad said. His voice was low, but it carried more weight than Sterling's Rolls-Royce. Preston froze. He is better than you, Caleb, Dad said. Wait, I mean Preston, adrenaline makes names slip. She is better than you, Preston. And it has nothing to do with her money. My dad looked at Sterling. She's better than you because she knows the value of $1. She knows how to struggle. You too. You think price is value. You think expensive things make you important people. But look at you. Dad gestured to Preston, who was panting, red-faced, standing over a broken bowl of potatoes. You're a mess, Dad said. My daughter is a queen. Come on, Savannah. We're leaving. Wait. Sterling stood up. Robert, wait. Let's not be hasty. This is wonderful news. We should celebrate. Savannah, we need to talk about asset management. You can't just leave that money in a checking account. My firm can handle, don't touch her money, Sterling, Dad said. You wouldn't lend her $1,200 to fix her car. You don't get to touch her $10 million. That was a lesson. Sterling sputtered. I was trying to teach her resilience. Well, I said, picking up my phone and wiping a drop of wine off the screen. Lesson learned, Uncle Sterling. You taught me exactly who not to trust. I turned to Preston. He was slumped back in his chair, head in his hands. Oh, and Preston, I said. One more thing. That Porsche out front. The leasing agent is a friend of a friend. I heard you're 3 months behind on payments. You might want to use that bonus check. Oh wait, you didn't get one, did you? Preston looked up, his eyes filled with pure horror. How did you? I have data, I smiled. I know everything. Walking out of that house felt like walking out of a prison I hadn't realized I was in. The front door clicked shut behind us, muffling the sounds of Aunt Beatrice sobbing and Uncle Sterling yelling at Preston. The silence of the cool November evening was beautiful. We walked to my car. My beat-up, reliable Toyota. My mom was trembling. She grabbed my hand. Savannah, 10 million. Is it real? It's real, Mom, I said, unlocking the doors. Oh my God, she whispered, putting a hand to her chest. I thought you were just getting by. I didn't want to say anything until it was signed, I said. I didn't want to jinx it. We got into the car. The engine sputtered a bit as it started. I really did need a tune-up, but it roared to life. I backed out of the bushes, drove past the silver Porsche, past the Rolls-Royce, and down the long, winding driveway. Nobody said anything for the first 5 minutes. We just watched the mansions of the hill fade away in the rearview mirror, replaced by the modest ranch houses of the valley. My dad broke the silence. You know, he said, staring out the window. I would have been proud of you even if you were broke. I know, Dad, I said, glancing at him. But he chuckled, a sound of pure relief. I'm not gonna lie. Seeing Sterling's face, that was worth more than the money. We all started laughing. It started as a giggle from Mom, then a chuckle from me, and soon we were all laughing hysterically. Tears streamed down my face. We laughed until our ribs hurt. We laughed at the absurdity of it all. The wine on the tablecloth. The mashed potatoes in the fireplace. The look of absolute terror in Preston's eyes when I mentioned the lease payments. How did you know about the car payments? Mom asked, wiping her eyes. Brad, I said. Preston's best friend. He messaged me on LinkedIn last week trying to get a job at my company. He talks too much. Unbelievable, Dad shook his head. So it's all smoke and mirrors. They're living on credit. Most people like them are, I said. When we got to my parents' small, cozy house, we didn't have a turkey. We had left before the main course was served. I'm starving, Mom said. Me too, I said. Pizza? Dad suggested. Pizza, we agreed. We ordered 3 large pizzas with everything on them. We sat on the living room floor, eating from the box, drinking cheap soda. It was the best Thanksgiving dinner I have ever had. But the night wasn't over. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang. It was Aunt Beatrice. I put it on speaker. Savannah, her voice was sickly sweet, but I could hear the tremor in it. Hi, dear. Listen, I just wanted to apologize for the commotion earlier. Preston he's been under so much pressure. You know how high-strung geniuses can be. I looked at my dad and rolled my eyes. Geniuses. Right. Anyway, she continued. I was thinking, we shouldn't let this ruin the holidays. Why don't you come back for Christmas? And bring your parents, of course. We can talk. Uncle Sterling has some wonderful ideas for tax shelters for you. You really need to protect that capital. Aunt Beatrice, I interrupted. I'm going to stop you right there. Yes? I'm not coming for Christmas, I said. And I'm not interested in Sterling's tax shelters. In fact, I'm not interested in seeing any of you for a very long time. But we're family, she wailed. Family helps family. Exactly, I said. And where were you when I needed $1,200? Where were you when Mom broke her hip? You're not family, Beatrice. You're relatives. There's a difference. I hung up. Then, I blocked the number. I looked at my parents. Was that too harsh? Nope, Dad said, taking another slice of pepperoni pizza. It was just right. So, Mom said, looking at me with glowing eyes. What are you going to do now? With the money? Are you going to buy a Porsche? I laughed. No. I hate Porsches. But there's one thing I want to buy. What? Grandma's old house, I said. My mom gasped. Grandma's house, the old farmhouse with the big garden, had been sold 5 years ago when she passed away because none of us could afford to keep it. A developer had bought it but hadn't torn it down yet. I called the developer last week, I said. He's willing to sell. I want to buy it back. Restore it. Give it to you guys. Mom started crying again. Dad just reached over and squeezed my hand. And I added. I'm sending a check to Chloe tomorrow. $1.2 million. That's 1,000 times what she lent you, Dad calculated. I keep my promises, I said. That night, sleeping in my childhood twin bed, looking at the ceiling where I used to dream about escaping, I realized something. The money didn't fix me. I was already fixed. The money just gave me the volume knob to amplify who I really was. And it gave me the mute button to silence the people who tried to break me. I fell asleep listening to the wind in the trees, knowing that for the first time in my life, I wasn't running a race against anyone. I had already won. The days following Thanksgiving were strange. I expected a war. I expected Uncle Sterling to sue me for some made-up breach of family contract, or Aunt Beatrice to show up at my apartment wailing about family unity. I even expected Preston to troll me online. But there was nothing. Just silence. It turns out, when you hold all the cards, the people who used to bluff suddenly fold. I didn't waste time waiting for them. I had work to do. Not coding this time, but rebuilding the foundation of my life that they had tried to chip away for 20 years. The first stop was the developer's office. Mr. Henderson was a gruff man who smelled like cigars and sawdust. He owned the deed to my grandmother's old farmhouse. He had been planning to bulldoze it to build a row of generic townhouses. When I walked into his office, he didn't look up from his blueprints. If you're selling cookies, I'm not interested, he grunted. I'm not selling cookies, I said, sitting down uninvited. I'm buying the Reed property. 42 Oak Lane. He laughed, finally looking up. Honey, that land is zoned for multifamily development. It's worth a fortune. Unless you have $1 million cash, you're wasting my time. I didn't say a word. I just slid a cashier's check across his messy desk. It was for $1.2 million. 20% over market value, just to make sure he couldn't say no. Mr. Henderson stopped laughing. He picked up the check. He looked at it, then at me, then back at the check. Is this real? Call the bank, I said. And I want the keys today. 3 hours later, I was standing in the driveway of 42 Oak Lane. The grass was waist high. The paint was peeling, revealing the gray wood underneath. The porch sagged on the left side. To anyone else, it looked like a teardown. To me, it looked like victory. I walked up the creaking steps and unlocked the door. The smell hit me instantly: dust, old pine, and the faint, ghostly scent of my grandmother's lavender potpourri. It smelled like safety. It smelled like the days before I knew I was poor, before I knew I was less than. I called my parents. Meet me at Grandma's house, was all I said. When they pulled up 40 minutes later, Dad looked confused. Savannah. What are we doing here? I thought Henderson was tearing this place down next week. He was, I said, dangling the keys. But I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Welcome home, Dad. I have never seen my father cry. Not when he broke his leg, not when he lost his job 10 years ago. But that day, standing in the overgrown yard of his childhood home, he wept. He walked around touching the walls, the old fireplace, the window where he used to watch for the school bus. We're going to fix it, I told them. New roof, new plumbing, new everything. But we keep the soul. This is where we gather now. No more mansions on the hill. We have our own castle. That was the first time I realized that money is actually energy. You can use it to destroy, like Sterling did, or you can use it to heal. The next mission was Chloe. Chloe, my ride or die. The girl who sold her Vespa so I could fix my transmission. She was still working at the bakery, waking up at 4 a.m. to knead dough for $12 an hour. She had dreams of opening her own patisserie, but dreams cost capital, and banks don't lend to dreamers with student debt. I walked into the bakery on a Tuesday morning. It was busy. Chloe was behind the counter, covered in flour, looking exhausted but smiling at a rude customer who was complaining about the price of a croissant. Hey, I said, leaning on the counter when the line cleared. Can I get a coffee? And maybe a business partner? Chloe wiped her hands on her apron. Save. I heard about Thanksgiving. Your mom called me. Is it true? Did Preston really smash the potatoes? He did, I laughed. But that's not why I'm here. What time is your break? 10 minutes, she said. We sat at a small table in the corner. I pulled out an envelope. Chloe, I said seriously. Do you remember sophomore year? The transmission. Save, stop, she waved her hand. You don't have to pay me back. I know you're good for it, but honestly, seeing you win is payment enough. I calculated the interest, I said. It's compounded. Aggressively. I slid the envelope to her. She opened it. She pulled out the check. I watched her face. First, confusion. She counted the zeros. Then, shock. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. She looked around the bakery to see if this was a prank show. Savannah, she whispered, her voice trembling. This says $1,200,000. You made a mistake. You added too many zeros. 1 million for your bakery, I said. 200,000 to buy a new Vespa. A really, really nice one. I can't take this, she pushed the check back. It's too much. It's crazy. You invested in me when I was a penny stock, I said, pushing it back to her. This is just your dividend. Take it, Chloe. Quit this job. Go find a storefront. Make the best croissants this city has ever tasted. That's an order. She burst into tears. We sat there in the middle of the coffee shop, hugging and crying, while people stared. I didn't care. I realized that the only thing better than having financial freedom is giving it to someone who truly deserves it. But while my world was expanding, the world on the hill was collapsing. I didn't go looking for the news, but in a small town, the news finds you. Especially when it involves a public humiliation. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I got a call from Elena, the housekeeper at Sterling's mansion. She whispered into the phone, like she was afraid of being overheard. "Miss Savannah," she said. "I shouldn't be calling, but I thought you should know. It's bad here. Very bad." "What happened, Elena?" "The repo men came this morning," she said. "For the Porsche. And the boat." I felt a jolt of shock. I knew Preston was behind, but I didn't think it was that fast. "Mr. Preston, he tried to fight them," Elena continued. "He was screaming about who his father is. He tried to block the driveway with his body. The neighbors were watching. It was shameful. And Uncle Sterling? He's in his study with lawyers," she said. "I heard them talking. Apparently, he leveraged the house to cover Preston's gambling debts. They might lose the estate, Miss Savannah. They are fighting about money all day long. Screaming. Throwing things. It's not a home anymore. It's a war zone." I thanked her and hung up. I sat in my quiet apartment, looking out the window. Part of me, the part of me that remembered being 10 years old and holding a broken doll, wanted to laugh. I wanted to drive up there and eat popcorn while they moved out. But another part of me, the part that my parents raised, just felt a deep, heavy sadness. I realized that their wealth was never real. It was a costume. They spent their whole lives trying to convince the world they were kings, but they were just prisoners of their own image. Preston didn't own that Porsche, the Porsche owned him. It defined his entire self-worth. Without it, who was he? He was nobody. And that is a terrifying thing to be. I decided then that I wouldn't intervene. I wouldn't gloat, but I wouldn't save them either. You can't save people who are addicted to their own superiority. They have to hit rock bottom to wake up. I focused on the renovation. I focused on Chloe's grand opening. I focused on living a life that was real. 6 months passed. My life settled into a new rhythm. I wasn't just rich. I was busy. But this time, I was busy with things that mattered. I started a foundation called the First Generation Scholarship. The goal was simple: find kids like me. Kids with rusty cars and big brains. Kids who had to choose between textbooks and groceries. We didn't just give them tuition, we gave them a stipend for life, rent, food, therapy, whatever they needed to focus on their genius. Reading their application essays was like looking in a mirror. My laptop is duct taped together. My parents don't understand what I do. I just need a chance. I gave them that chance. Grandma's farmhouse was finished in May. We threw a massive barbecue. Not a catered gala. A barbecue. My dad worked the grill. Mom made her famous potato salad, served in a plastic bowl that wouldn't shatter if you dropped it. Chloe brought pastries from her new shop, the Golden Crust, which already had a line out the door every morning. We invited everyone. Neighbors, friends, the contractors who fixed the roof. It was loud, messy, and perfect. There were no Porsches in the driveway, just pickup trucks and sedans. There was no talk of stock prices or country clubs. Just laughter. That afternoon, I walked to the mailbox at the end of the long driveway. I saw a car slow down on the main road. It was a Honda Civic. An older model. The driver looked at the house, then at me. It was Preston. He looked different. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a simple blue button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked thinner. The arrogant puffiness in his face was gone, replaced by tired lines around his eyes. He didn't pull in. He just idled there for a moment. I could have turned away. I could have walked back to the party. But I walked toward the car. I stopped about 10 feet away. Preston rolled down the window. The car made a rattling noise. It sounded exactly like my old car used to sound. "Hey," he said. His voice wasn't booming anymore. It was quiet. Rough. "Hey," I said. He looked past me, at the farmhouse, at the smoke rising from the grill, at the people laughing. "Looks nice," he said. "Real." "It is," I said. "How are you, Preston?" He gripped the steering wheel. I saw that he wasn't wearing his Rolex. His wrist looked bare. "I'm working," he said. "Sales. Solar panels. Door to door, mostly. It's humbling." "It's honest work," I said. "Yeah," he let out a short, dry laugh. "Dad sold the house. They moved to a condo in Florida. Downsized. I stayed here. Figured I needed to learn how to. I don't know. Survive." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. There was no malice in his eyes. Just a deep, aching regret. "I heard about the scholarship fund," he said. "That's cool, save. Really cool. Thanks." He hesitated, struggling with the words. "I never said sorry. For Thanksgiving. For everything. For the science fair. For the loan. For being a prick." I looked at him. I remembered the boy who smashed his toys because he was bored. I remembered the men who mocked my poverty. But looking at him now, driving a clunker, working a hard job, stripped of his armor, I didn't feel angry. "You were a prick," I said honestly. He flinched but nodded. "Yeah. I was." But I continued. "You were also a product of your environment. You were taught that money makes you human. It doesn't." "I know that now," he said softly. "Trust me. I know." "Apology accepted, Preston," I said. "But that doesn't mean you get an invite to the barbecue." He smiled. A genuine, sad smile. I didn't expect one. I needed to see it. To see that you were right. "I was right," I said. "Take care, Savannah," he said. "Drive safe, Preston." He put the car in gear and drove away. I watched his taillights disappear down the road. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt peace. He was on his own journey now. Maybe he would make it. Maybe he wouldn't. But for the first time, he was driving his own car, not his father's. And that was a start. I walked back to the party. My dad waved a pair of tongs at me. "Who was that?" "Just an old acquaintance," I said. "Nobody important." I grabbed a paper plate and stood in line for a burger. I looked around at the people I loved. I thought about the $10 million sitting in my bank account. It was a safety net, yes. It was power, yes. But standing there, smelling the charcoal smoke and hearing my mom laugh, I realized the real wealth wasn't the number on the screen. The real wealth was knowing that if that number disappeared tomorrow, I would still be Savannah. I would still have my brain. I would still have my resilience. I would still have the people who loved me when I had nothing. Uncle Sterling and Preston had built their lives on sand, the shifting sand of status and perception. When the tide came in, they washed away. I had built my life on rock. On hard work. On truth. On the absolute refusal to let anyone else define my value. And that, my friends, is a currency that never devalues. We live in a world that is obsessed with the shiny exterior. We scroll through Instagram and see the Porsches, the vacations, the perfect lives, and we feel small. We feel like we're falling behind. Like my cousin Preston, we are taught that if we don't have the things, we don't have the value. My dad was right all along. They were renting their victory. I own mine. And if you are out there right now, working in the dark, struggling, feeling invisible, keep going. Your time is coming. And when it does, make sure you have the character to handle it. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the one thing in your life that you are most proud of? Is it a skill? A relationship? A moment where you stood up for yourself? Let me know in the comments. Or, if you just enjoyed seeing a bully finally get what he deserved, type the word good below. It tells me that you value integrity over image, and honestly, seeing those goods pile up is the best reminder that the good guys really do win in the end. Thanks for listening. Stay real.